Hi, I'm Doug Spindler. I'm a friend of Mike's. I'm actually directly across the street from him. I've known him since he was in high school. We've been here 37, no, I don't know, 30, well, since 1986, December 24th. Anyway, during this whole time, we've had a family, and just to introduce myself and what I do, I'm a mason. I do brick, concrete, tile, stone, glass block, tile, anything that has to do with building materials that's in the masonry trades, and occasionally carpentry too. However, something transpired in our neighborhood, and we were kind of cursed, but a blessing came out of it. And the blessing is this: we are allowed to now extend the height of our walls 7 feet, and I've always been wanting to do some work on this wall for over 30 years, and I never got it done. Now that I'm retired, most of my kids are moved out, at least 2 of them. I am currently decided, I got motivated, and I have finished 1 section of the wall, and I'd like to share it with you now. Now, as an introduction, besides working with brick and stone, I am quite a hobbyist, and I've gotten into doing crafts. And one of the things that I did, I go out into riverbeds and I find limestone, basically, which is fossilized pieces of limestone that has seashells in it. And so I'd cut them down, and then I thought, gee, what else can I do? And since I was at a material yard, I'd see some onyx stone. I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be kind of nice to make knives out of? And so this is one such sample of that. So I am going to go ahead and put this up here and start talking about this wall that I did. It started many years ago. I also had been contacted by a couple that wanted to do some crazy brick. And though I wanted to do a mural ultimately in this wall, I didn't know what direction I was going to go. So I got up a few courses and I left it for the day of inspiration. And of course, supporting my family took up most of my time subsequently. Now that I'm retired, I'm active. So I started laying brick and stone. And as I did, some of these stones started taking shapes and inspiring me. And one of the things that I started doing, for example, I told people that I had found some glass block, as you can see right here. And this was my first experiment, and I put some, what do you call those, tail feathers of a peacock inside. And it didn't turn out so well, but it was an experiment. And I thought, okay, go ahead and leave it. And as I left it, I thought, well, okay, I can put this little bottle here. And then as I backed off, I realized I got a little piece of onyx here. It almost looks like the face of a masked man that's got drinking on his mind. But this is not a beer bottle. This is actually a ginger ale bottle. But as I was looking at it, when I saw this stone here, it kind of resembled a sail for a sailboat. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I found this tile that was broken. And I thought, well, if I put these 3 beside it, or these 2 other tiles, that'll look kind of like the edge of a sailboat. And I thought, man, you've got the captain of a sailboat going here. And then I thought, well, my gosh, if this is a sailboat, I had split open another rock, and the inside of it kind of looked like a cloudy sky during the sunset, and you have all these colors on it. So I thought, oh my gosh. And so I was getting these inspirations. And by the way, I started realizing, in as much as I've been doing things like this, God has frequently inspired me, and I have to say, it's God being the person who's inspiring this. So as I started laying it down, I was coming to different areas, and I had worked on a job recently where I had laid some stucco and there was enough left over. So instead of trying to spread it around and having to break it up later, I put it in a clump and I shaped it into a round ball. And I thought, I wonder if I could sculpt a little face on it. So I put a face on it and I set it on the wall to dry, and it turned out like this. I thought, that's kind of cool. Client first said he wanted it, and his wife says, not on your life. And so I says, okay, I'll take it home and I'll put it in my wall. And so as I put it in, I saw it's balled in. I said, well, I don't have it balled in completely except for on the top. Maybe if I put a little bit of and I looked down, and there was this tile that had a broken corner on it. I realized, my gosh, I could put it up on here and make a crown. But then when I looked down here, I realized I had done all of these other sort of textures in this lower portion of the wall, including rocks. And there was this pyramid. And I thought, oh my gosh. I'd already had this row going, and then this. And I realized there are stories that are beginning to happen here, because I'd already started with the sailboat, and then I saw these bricks like this and these, and I realized these would be much like the priests that are going up the cliff, excuse me, up this pyramid to worship what was then a man god by the Aztecs and the Incas. But they always had these slaves, and they were always, of course, being reluctant to be going up because they knew they were going to be sacrificed, human sacrifices, decapitated, and their heads would roll down through this rough thing. So that became symbolic of the New World. And then at that point I thought, well, shucks, if I have, because I wanted to think about, you know, Europe and its influence, I thought, well, if we put a big building here like this, or how else can I, well, wait a minute. This can almost look like a head if I shape this like the wind blowing. So I took a brick and I cut it like a man's lips and nose, and I realized, well, it's not complete. It needs a hat. As you can tell, I'm a hat man myself. I've been wearing them my whole life because of my skin. And I actually did some work in Austria for the castle that was being renovated by Capo Costa Mesa. And I had gotten an Austrian hat, and so I put a little feather in it here and there. And then I had it blowing. I had some pieces of marble, so I put it in here so that it would be like the wind that was blowing these sails this way. But then also you have these air currents coming down here, and I thought, okay, you've got this wind, but isn't it true that the people that were coming to the New World were constantly faced with difficulties, and many of the ships sank? And I thought, well, put in a tsunami right here. So I took these bricks and I curved them up like this, and I thought, well, the top of a tsunami is always crashing down, so I put the white water up here, and then I had these seashells that I'd gotten from a restaurant, and these are oyster shells and mussel shells, and they look like the top of it coming down, but I realized I had a piece of marble, and I'd have the crest up here, and it was just too tall, so I had it hitting the cap of the wall and splashing out. And I'm still looking for the better dolphin to be jumping through the crest of the wave, so as if it would look like it would come down and land on the boat below. Now, in the meantime, I had been telling you, as I had said, that if anybody wants to donate anything to put into the wall, I would put it in glass blocks. So my next experiment was I had a toy, a stuffed toy that I had had on my dashboard of my car, which is an octopus. And I stuck it in there and I put it in here. And I also had some pieces of limestone that I had cut open. And so I put it in here, and I had this other rock right here that, to me, from the side, it almost looks like a man with a turban and a beard, like a Babylonian. But when I put these other two limestone pieces on it, it reminded me of the hat that Napoleon Bonaparte had during the time that he was actually turning the world into his little empire. And then it occurred to me, after I had already set this triangular section up here, that when he had conquered Egypt, he looked at the pyramid there of Khufu, and he figured out, I'll bet you a wall could be built around France, 3 feet wide and 3 feet high. And mathematicians, I was told later on, figured out that he was pretty doggone accurate in terms of his assessment. I thought, man, isn't it interesting that these things come together? Though I'm being inspired, to me, I see this story consistently being told. Now, again, we talk about the seas, and so back in those days, we were being transported, that would be to say as immigrants, from the old world, being at Europe, to the New World, and which brings us to a more important point, because as we get past this point right here, you will notice also I put this one glass block here on top of this little post here, which represents a lighthouse. And as you look at this lighthouse, you'll see a light that's shining in this direction. But what's most importantly, that lighthouse shines towards this star. Now this blue star, I actually had purchased a bottle of wine that you could get at Trader Joe's only during the Christmas season. And the next year that I bought one, I thought, well, okay, I'll have 2 good bud vases because they're really pretty as bud vases. And then I set them one next to the other, and I thought, wait a minute, I wonder if, and so I set them, and I imagined 3 more, and I thought, oh my gosh, it'd make a perfect star. So as I came about thinking, okay, I've got to put this into the wall. Where will I put it? I thought, well, if we put it at the entrance, and oh my gosh, if I put a stable down below, it would represent the star that shone over Bethlehem above the little stable where Jesus was born. And these steps would be representing how the wise men came from around the world at that time, or the known world, from the east, to give homage to the newborn king that they knew was born, and to the point that they even asked Herod, where on earth is this baby that we're supposed to be finding? So this dark brick here represented the night, and of course these rays represents how it shines across the world. I'm still looking for an angel to be putting in here as well, and how to do that. But again, once we as Christians have accepted him, once we know the story of the birth of the Christ, you also know this is very small, and it's a representation of the 3 crosses, of course, which Jesus had to die on the cross. And we, as Christians, were given the Great Commission to go ye into all the world. My parents went to Africa, and they took a boat, and as you can see, this is not just a sailboat, but by this wake it's making pretty good time, and it's cranking to go to these other places in the world where they still were practicing idolatry and worshiping false gods. God gave me that vision myself, and to go and help other people. And no, it's not always smooth sailing, and that's why you see these clouds here. Some are very dark and some are distant, but God provides the covering. God protects us in those, and if we are truly doing what we're called to do, that's what he's going to do for us. So we are not without troubles and tribulations. We face them every day, but God gives us the grace to pull through, and he also inspires us. And I felt in a lot of ways God inspired me to do this, because there are so many stories in different ways that different people can interpret what they see in something like this, and I challenge other people to do the same thing. Anyway, this was a blessing to me to do, and this portion is done. Thank you, Mike. Any questions from you?
No, that was perfect. I wanted to take up one shot. Oh, I'm just going to start at the beginning and go all the way to the end. I'm just going to take a video. And
That's
you can
fine.
say anything you want to say.
Why don't I walk behind you so you can do that rather than me being in the way?
Okay, all right.
This is the portion of the wall that starts just past the garage, the end of the garage, and it goes to the front gate. I'm, of course, doing the wall before I do the walkway between here and the gate, so that when I lay the concrete and the stone across the top of it, there will be a drain that goes underneath. But the last thing I'm going to do is to be splashing cement and stuff on a finished floor before it's done. One other point that I might make, if back here is on this octopus, is the fact that when you look at it, it blends in with the onyx around it. And I felt compelled to say that Christ puts us in the world to blend into the world, because we are in the world but not of the world. So we have that to be in amongst other people, not to be like them, but to be representatives of God, and to fit in and blend, but to be protected from them. And that kind of represents the shield that he has around us and with us here.
Very good, very good.
By the way, that sailboat is made out of onyx, much like the blades of the knife that you saw up there. And the back is a polished black granite that they came off of countertops of banks and places like that. And I've also used them in the type of work that I do for like baseboard on top of marble. And when it's polished, it looks really nice. So if anybody wants to contact me, I encourage you again, if you can do this sort of thing yourself, do it. If you want some inspiration, I'll make myself available for it. And I can perhaps do something like this for you too as well, if that's something that you feel led to do. And I adapt so that you tell me what you want and I'll work with you.
What's the best way to contact you, Doug?
Oh, well, you can reach me on my cell phone at area code 714-801-9809. And I've been in the trades for over 40 years, 45 years.
Wow.
So thank you very much for doing this, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Doug.